Thank you very much. So the ability to improvise is really, really important. Apparently years and years, yes, honestly it is Shruti. Years and years ago, I think Rafe Richardson and Gielgud were in a play together, and they kind of didn't really like each other very much. And they were certainly very competitive, and at one point Gielgud was sitting at a table on which there was a telephone, a stage telephone, and Richardson had organised that the phone would ring in the middle of his main soliloquy. Quick as a flash, and of course if the phone's ringing you have to answer it, there's nothing you can do if it's ringing on stage. So Gielgud picked it up and went to Richardson, "It's for you." I have no idea whether that story is true, but it's a nice story. So we're going to try and be as swift as we can with our panel. Because I'm conscious that we've got some of the best people in this country in this room, some of the most creative people, and the people who know how to drive the future of our economy. And so we're going to go across each of the panelists who are going to say a few words. But please, if you've got brilliant ideas that you want to throw at us, or not long ideas. Brevity is the soul of wit, as Lisa is often telling me, and I'm not very good at listening. So, we're going to start with Caroline Norbury, who is absolutely magnificent.
Absolutely, absolutely. So these are not my words. I'm going to play back the conversations that we picked up from the tables and the discussions in the session we've just had. So, in some sort of particular order, done very, very quickly, some of the questions, some of the things that we were talking about, which was around the importance of culture and the creative industries to place, went like this. The first is that we always talk about this ecosystem, we always talk about the interrelationship between what's cultural and what's commercial, you know, what's subsidised, what makes money, yada, yada, yada. But we always talk about it, but can we get policymakers to really, really believe it? And can they show us that they really, really believe it by making sure that cultural and creative infrastructure is recognised as being as important as other types of infrastructure, whether that's road, rail, the NHS. So that was one message. Another message was, and I thought this was particularly pertinent, was how the industrial strategy, because that's the context for this conversation, isn't it really, is messages to land to reach the industrial strategy. That the industrial strategy is going to be really, really important in helping businesses focus around growth and give them the tools and the different fiscal and policy incentives to generate that growth. But the message that I heard from some of the tables was that we need government to articulate and the narrative about how that infrastructure that I've just mentioned is really, really important to that growth, and that they need to articulate the narrative back to private businesses and help embed the message that arts and culture is about building social capital and economic prosperity. So there are lots and lots of phrases we use all the time, which is, you know, it's not about nice to have, it's not the cherry on the cake, it is the cake, etc., etc. But can we see that reflected in the industrial strategy? There was a lot of conversations about career paths and a real opportunity for businesses, and we've got lots of very, very, very big businesses here today and lots of sort of smaller businesses here, but the ways in which industry can lean into engaging with communities, working with schools, showcasing what those career pathways might be. And I do think that, you know, we're getting ourselves together as a sector to do more in this way, but we do need to show more leadership about how we go out and work in communities, and we work in lots and lots of different places rather than through big apprenticeships. The only other thing I'm going to say, two things very briefly, is a lot of chat about initiative overload, and is there something within the industrial strategy or within the sector plan that can force alignment between local, regional, national? And last of all, 24,000 people went out at -6 degrees last Friday to celebrate Bradford 2025. Politicians care about what the public thinks. 24,000 people went out at -6 degrees because they thought that the City of Culture was important, so I wanted to send that message.
I have a little thing about towns as well as cities, but anyway, we'll be coming on to that in a few weeks' time. I'm not meant to have said that. Darren.
Thank you.
Also equally magnificent, by the way.
Thank you. As are you and your chairing. So I've got three areas. We talked about skills. I think the first thing to say was it was really welcome to see a Department of Education Minister on stage and have the schools minister here with us. That's something that's been very, very lacking probably recently, and I think making that engagement is so important. We talked about the Professor Becky Francis curriculum review that's coming up, also important. And the place of music and dance and drama and art and design, as well as specialist and vocational courses in the classroom, and particularly for young people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, those tougher socioeconomic backgrounds. If they don't come across this at school, they may not come across it automatically in their lives, and so it's really important that it's there. You know, cultural education in schools is in 4 boxes: formal, informal, out of school and in school. We need to make sure it works across all 4 of those boxes, and every child can access that. The second area is, you know, we're really welcoming the focus on ensuring, if you think of this as a pyramid, the bottom layer of the pyramid is getting as many young people into the pyramid to experience the possibilities of working in this area as possible. But it's also really important we then don't forget the talent pipeline further up, because otherwise we just we give people, we show them what they could have. It's a little bit like bullseye. You get to see what you could have, and then actually you don't win it. And I think what we need to do is every young person needs to be able to win it. And actually one thing from the broadcast industry particularly is thinking about not forgetting about once you get people into those industries, how we retain and grow their careers across the country, because it's no good, again, bringing them in at an entry-level job and then finding they can't actually progress through the industry in places, in towns and cities across the country. And probably just a note which sometimes is a little bit hard for public sector bodies to deal with sometimes. In our industry, pathways are non-linear. They're sort of a squiggly line, and that can be difficult. We need to recognise that and make sure that government can respond to that appropriately. And finally, we touched on very briefly at the end, because we ran out of time, around careers guidance and the need for that to really be improved. And we recognise there's already some movement on that, but there's so much more we can do there, particularly around widening the horizons of young people from challenging socioeconomic backgrounds, so they understand the possibilities, particularly when they don't have a network. It's fine if you've got people who've worked in this industry before, or you know people, or you can access that, or your school or university can help you access that. If you haven't got that, this is still an industry for you. It goes to everything that the Minister and the Secretary of State have said around telling people stories. We won't hear those stories if they're not in a position to tell them. And we really need to also help those young people to understand the breadth of possibility within the creative industries, so that it isn't just being a superstar on stage, it's all of the other things that you can do as well, and there's a proper career there.
Thank you very much. And now over to Ben, who is perfectly wonderful.
It's perfectly wonderful.
That on?
Yeah. Perfectly wonderful. So I was leading the session looking at how to harness innovation in the creative industries to drive investment and growth. And we broke it down into three questions that the groups broke out into. So barriers to growth, what's good about the existing support that's out there, because there is so much that's out there, and that was well recognised across the piece. And then how can the creative industries and creative industry organisations be better supported? In terms of barriers to growth, there were 2 big areas, perhaps unsurprisingly, and you've heard from others around them. First around skills, and second around investment. And you know, within that, and it's a recurring theme, and actually one that I've heard echoed in the 2 previous speakers, is one around both, there is a lot there, but it's incredibly complex. Incredibly hard to navigate, whether that's in terms of the tax credits, whether that's in terms of the existing investments, whether that's the delineation between regional, national and international opportunities. Actually, at the moment, simply being able to navigate that, particularly for micro businesses or for smaller businesses, is incredibly tough and complex. On the investment side, how and when the government can help, and in what ways the government can help in terms of areas where there is market failure versus market stimulus. There were opportunities around, obviously, the role, centrality of IP protection for an investment case in the UK creative sectors. In terms of existing support, again, a little question around do we spend so much time competing with ourselves? Do we spend so much time, or more of our effort as regions, competing with other regions, or as regions competing with national opportunities? Where does the focus, how does the focus switch to competing with the other markets around the world, the markets for whom our competitive advantage barriers are coming down and are looking at us as a tasty opportunity? How do we reinforce that, and where and how the government can intervene? Also, a real push for devolution further in terms of how investment opportunities should be driven, whether reducing bureaucracy, the idea that the same forms have to be filled out multiple times depending on which of the different funding sources you're applying for, which tax relief credits you're applying for, whether you're dealing with Invest UK, Catapult, the Culture Creative Investment Programme, so much repetition again on small businesses or on creative organisations. How do we remove some of that? And then finally, you can see how beautifully organised my notes are. And finally, in terms of the support that can be given, recognising that, again, one of the opportunities that the UK offers and can offer even to our smallest players is the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants. We really do have some success stories, and we're not making the most of those at the moment, whether that's domestically or in terms of actually trade fairs internationally, really seeking to leverage the big players that we've got, and to better tell the story of the sector. And again, I think that echoes elements that the two previous speakers have spoken, and it's something, as a Brit, as a European working in a large American organisation, I'm always reminded Americans have two understandings of Europe, which is either it's UK, France and Germany, or it's 75 markets and it's all very complicated, neither of which is particularly effective when you're trying to drive things forward. I spend a huge amount of my time trying to simplify the story for my investors. I think there's something more that we can do as the UK's creative sector in simplifying and telling our story internationally as well.
Thanks very much. I on that final point, Charlotte Church once told me a story of, I don't know why that's funny. We're both Welsh.
And singers.
And we had arguably. Not in the,
It's very good.
Look, I'm telling a story. So Charlotte Church told me this story that she was invited to sing at the White House when George Bush was president. She was introduced to him afterwards, and she was quite young, and he said to her, where are you from? And she said, Wales. And he said, what state is that in? And she said, terrible. See, it's not a bad story if you've waited. Now, look, we've also got Shruti here with us, and Shruti wasn't doing one of the groups earlier, so I think it's important we grill her a little bit, yeah? No, it's not that bad. So, Shruti, you've taken on this role, and we're really, really grateful. Baz has already referred to, you're the militant wing of what we're trying to achieve. What's the one thing that has really struck you since the creative industries are not new to you, I know that, because of your involvement in the RSC and so on, but what's the one thing that has struck you since you've been involved in this industrial strategy process?
I think what's struck me the most is that we don't have the story and the evidence that backs the reality of who we are, which is utterly brilliant at what we do in one of the few sectors in the world where we have a comparative advantage. If you went out and asked anybody in the world, and I spend a lot of my time abroad, what is Britain good at, they would say financial services and creative industries. And when we don't seem to have grown into our limbs and don't seem to have the narrative and the evidence and the language with which we explain ourselves. And I think that we can do this. And I get Karen's point that maybe the government should write the story, but actually, the best story writers in the world are here. Why would we get the government to write the story? We should. Oh, thank you. Good, I'm glad you missed the first part. But
It was really, really good. People heard it, didn't they?
Yeah. So I feel like we should have that story, but we should have it with evidence. And this is not a sector that values evidence as much as it could. Because if you want more funding, if you want the financiers whether they're in the public or the private sectors, you have to make the case and you have to speak their language. And we can do this. There's no sort of rocket science about it at all. But it's been really a struggle to gather and collect evidence, despite the amazing Policy and Evidence Centre PEC, who are doing an incredible job. So that's what I would say we need to do. We need to think of ourselves also as an ecosystem. And this reminds me a little bit of the financial services sector or the life sciences sector 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and I've been involved in both of them for a long period of time. That they have come to learn to understand that they're an ecosystem, and that if you are going to be brilliant at video games, and we have people in the government side and policy side saying, just can you pick a sub-segment of game? No, you can't pick a sub-segment. Who are the musicians in the video game? I mean, where do you think this comes from? So you've got to let it hang together. The second thing is that we also undervalue our contribution to the rest of the economy. I mean, which form of advanced manufacturing is going to do without design? It just doesn't happen. Defence has been picked as one of the 8 sectors. I can tell you video games could teach them a thing or two. So we need to understand who we are in terms of the rest of the economy and what value we create there. And see ourselves as we are the creator economy. We create content. Yes, we can't be Luddite about AI. We have to find some mutually supportive way of approaching this, and that is yet to be fully sort of landed. But the reality is we have to have the confidence that we create the content that they use. We are the content economy, and in this economy, we don't own any significant AI platforms. We own the content. That is the thing that we have to learn how to value.
Great, thank you. And if anybody wants to come and lobby me about AI and copyright, feel free. Oh dear.
Sorry, I didn't mean to set you up.
Yes, well, how's Daniel Evans doing at the RSC? I ask because he's from the Rhondda, so...
He's doing extraordinarily well, and he is going to be in Edward II, which you're all welcome to come and see.
I've met a few Piers Gavestons in my time. But then again, too few to mention. Now, which musical... Sorry, no. Right, now, we've had enough from the people